Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Whitney and today's video is just going to be a little story time video. I was inspired by one of my new friends here on YouTube to share my birth story. It was kind of a crazy experience and I haven't really talked about it too much, but I wanted to share it with you all. And before I begin, I wanted to share a little bit of background information for those of you who are new here. I am a mom of two. I have a son who is almost 3 and a daughter who just turned 16 months. They're 18 months apart. And I also have a little angel baby in heaven who would be 5 years old now. My son's birth was a pretty normal experience. He was born at 40 weeks and 2 days, and I really didn't have any issues with his birth. My daughter, however, must have really liked it in my womb because she did not want it to come out at all. I was 41 weeks and I was growing really impatient. I knew that she was already a big baby, and my doctor doesn't like to go past 42 weeks, so I was getting pretty anxious waiting for her. At 41 weeks, I was still not having any contractions, not even Braxton Hicks contractions, and she just really wanted to stick around, I guess. So when I went in at 41 weeks to have another checkup with my doctor, he and I discussed inducing me, and honestly, I really did not want her to grow too much bigger because I knew I wanted to have a natural birth. So I agreed to be induced. He told us to come in that following morning around 2 o'clock in the morning. So we got there at 2 a.m. and everything seemed to be going great. I was given the Cytotec pill, which is to help induce labor, and everything was going really well. I was progressing pretty quickly. I wasn't having too harsh contractions just yet, and I was able to walk around, and I feel like that really helped me to progress. And my mom was there. She was such a wonderful help. She really knew what she was doing. She pushed on my back and just helped to relieve some of the pain, and I felt like I could really do this. I was actually laboring naturally with no pain medicine, and I was so proud of myself. So around 10 a.m. I had been having pretty close contractions, and they were not letting up at all. I didn't feel like I was really getting a break in between them, and they were starting to get really painful. So I knew that she was going to be born soon, and I was trying everything I could to not get an epidural or pain medicine, but I was in so much pain and there was absolutely no break in between the contractions. So I did ask for an epidural. Once you're so far along, I believe it's 9 centimeters, they will not allow you to get an epidural just because you're too close to labor and they don't want to risk the baby being born right there while you're waiting, I guess. So I had the nurse come in and check to see how far dilated I was, and she told me that I was 8 centimeters dilated. So I was like, okay, good, I can have an epidural now, and we're pretty close, so this should be soon. Right after she checked me, the nurse kind of paused for a minute and ran out into the hallway and started to yell cord. At this particular moment, I was trying really hard to just focus on getting through my contractions. I had my eyes closed and I was just breathing through them, so I didn't really notice what was going on. My mom and my husband were on both sides of me, and they were trying to figure out what was going on. At that moment, several nurses came running into the room. They began jumping and pushing on the bed that I was on to try to invert it so that my head was lower than my feet. No one really explained what was going on at that time, which I guess I can understand now, because in an emergency situation like that, they don't really have time to stop and explain what's going on. They're only focused on saving the mom and the baby. I remember opening my eyes in between one of the contractions, and I looked up to see my mom circling like this, telling my husband that the baby's cord was around her neck. And honestly, I was just so confused and in a lot of pain, and I really didn't know what to do. The doctor came in and took over for the nurse, and they told me to try to push while he pushed the baby's head up to try to push the cord back, but it wasn't really working. The very next thing I remember was my mom whispering into my ear that they were going to have to take me to emergency surgery and that everything was going to be okay. They wheeled me down the hall as a nurse sat on top of the bed with me, holding the baby's head in so that she wouldn't come out. I remember as they were rushing me down the hall, I just cried out, "Jesus, please don't leave me." I was so afraid of having a C-section. I have never had surgery before, and I feel like that was probably the most scary moment in my life. Once I got into the OR, I remember hearing the anesthesiologist tell me that I was going to have sweet dreams and that everything was going to be okay. And Hosanna was born 6 minutes later. I had been laboring without an epidural, so in that situation, they had to administer general anesthesia. So I was not awake when she was born. I was not the first one to hold her or hear her cry. I didn't even get to meet her until several hours later. Those are moments that I'm honestly still grieving. It's been a really hard process for me. I woke up a couple hours later in recovery, and the nurse that had been so awesome was waiting in there with me. She told me that my baby had a prolapsed cord, which is basically where the cord is trying to be born before the baby's head, and that can be very, very dangerous. If the baby's head is pushing on the cord trying to come out, that can cut off the baby's oxygen supply and the baby can be born still. The procedure for that is just to invert the bed. So I was laying like this with my head here, and they were trying to push the bed down so that my feet were higher than my head. They did try to do that, but the bed was actually stuck and would not move. So they ended up having to take me to emergency surgery to get her out quickly. If the bed would not have been stuck, I could have had the birth experience that I had been dreaming of. So fast forward to the next day, we were told that her bilirubin levels were too high, meaning that she was jaundice. My breast milk was not in yet, and basically for jaundice babies, they just want them to kind of poop it out. It sounds really weird, but if a baby can poop, then it will lower their jaundice levels. And since my breast milk was not in yet, she was not really pooping well, so her levels just continued to climb, and that can make a baby really sleepy also. So she was having a hard time staying awake to nurse in the first place. So she did have to have a lot of phototherapy, which is when jaundice babies have to lay under like a UV light, and they have this little cloth goggle that they wear to protect their eyes, and it was just such a pitiful sight. We ended up having to stay in the hospital for 5 days total, and she finally was able to drink and to get rid of some of those bilirubin levels, and we ended up getting home on Easter Sunday. She was my little Easter bunny. Ultimately, I am just so grateful that the nurse caught it when she did. I'm grateful that I asked for that epidural, because if I hadn't, there's no telling when that would have been caught and if my baby girl would even be here today. I believe that each of my babies are a miracle in their own little ways, and I am just so grateful to have them. So thank you so much for listening to my birth story. I'm really curious, have you ever heard of a prolapsed cord before? I had read about it a few times on some of my pregnancy apps, but apparently they're very rare, and I just really never thought it would happen to me. I would love to hear about your birth story, what it was like, if it was normal, if you had a crazy experience as well. Start a conversation with me down in the comments. I would love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless you guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye, friends.